LaToya was the Jackson her family could not control.
Michael is my brother. I love him a great deal, but I cannot and I will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small, innocent children.
That bombshell sent shockwaves around the world. But Michael wasn't LaToya's only target, not by a long shot. She tore the lid off more family secrets.
She maintained that she had been sexually abused by her father, Joseph.
When my sister Ruby was sexually abused, we slept in the same bed. And my mother would say to my father, "Joe, not tonight, leave her alone, let her rest. Not tonight, Joe."
LaToya also bared her body and soul in a brazen pictorial and video.
What really seemed like a fairy tale on the outside was really more like living in a nightmare. I was held captive and I was abused by my own parents.
What changed a shy, church-going little girl into an outspoken sex goddess? In the next hour, we'll go behind the walls of the Jackson family compound, where LaToya lived in virtual seclusion for the first 30 years of her life.
She kind of like just stayed around the house, and she would wear these kind of outfits, and a lot of them were sailor outfits, and she was real close with her mom.
We'll meet the controversial mastermind who guided LaToya's career and her life, a man with a shady past, determined to exploit the Jackson family name.
To me, LaToya was a product.
LaToya is being brainwashed or mind controlled by someone. And that someone is her husband.
We'll examine LaToya's tumultuous marriage, often lived in the shadow of tabloid headlines.
She undid her clothing and was standing there with black and blue marks all over her and her face.
We'll watch LaToya's career careen from legitimate to ludicrous.
I hate to think about all these things. It makes me feel real bad, real sad that my daughter was manipulated like that.
And finally, we'll explore the question, is LaToya a free-spirited artist or simply the puppet of a conniving Svengali? This is the story of the sister who leaped from the shadows to the spotlight, the LaToya Jackson story, the E! True Hollywood story.
The dream of being one of her life's ambition was to be a star.
The Jackson family dynasty, so conspicuous in both success and scandal, traces its roots to Gary, Indiana, a blue-collar community southeast of Chicago. Mother Catherine Jackson.
Gary was a steel town, and my husband worked in a steel mill, and it was kind of gray and smoky.
Joe Jackson was a crane operator and frustrated musician. Catherine was a homemaker. With 4 children, the family shared tight quarters, a tiny wood-framed home.
We bought it before my oldest child was born. Only 4 rooms. You could stand in the living room and see the whole house.
The Jacksons welcomed their 5th child on May 29, 1956, LaToya Yvonne Jackson. LaToya's mother, Catherine, was a devout Jehovah's Witness. Because of her beliefs, the Jackson children were raised in a sheltered environment. Biographer Randy Tarborelli.
From the very beginning, they were taught that the only people that they could trust were each other.
Michael was born in 1959, and by 1966, with the birth of Janet, the Jackson family had grown to 9 kids. The children developed a passion for music. Catherine especially encouraged the boys.
I think it was a talent that they had because it came so easy.
Joe decided to exploit their talents. He demanded that Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and Michael rehearse for hours on end. Journalist and Jackson family friend, Flo Anthony.
He was a tremendous disciplinarian. You had a man who made his children the most famous people in the world, so he had to be strict.
But in a 1991 appearance on the BBC, LaToya said strict didn't begin to describe her father.
He would hold guns to our heads and pull the trigger constantly. He would strike matches to our toes and let them burn while we were asleep.
LaToya's mother puts a different spin on Joe's brand of discipline.
They didn't get abused, but they got, lickings. You don't have to kill them, but you can just spank them.
By 1966, all of Joe's energies were focused on his 5 talented sons. 10-year-old LaToya was not part of the equation. Former Jackson 5 manager Richard Aarons.
You know, he was into the business of their careers. It didn't include LaToya.
Joe's daughter remained a shy, withdrawn little girl.
She was very close to me. She always said, my mother's my best friend. I used to tell her, LaToya, you need some more friends, because she'd be under me all the time. She said, there's nothing out there. You're my best friend.
LaToya watched with pride as her brothers, known as the Jackson 5, won a local talent contest. Between 1966 and 1968, under Joe's supervision, the boys spent every weekend performing at clubs, earning a reputation for their unique sound. LaToya stayed at home with her mother and dreamed of becoming a nurse. Eventually, talent and diligence brought the Jackson 5 to the attention of Motown Records founder Berry Gordy, who signed the boys to an exclusive contract on March 11, 1969. Florence LaRue, the singing group The Fifth Dimension.
They were awesome, so young and so talented. It was hard to imagine that young people could be so disciplined and so musical at such a young age.
With the lucrative Motown deal in hand, the Jacksons said goodbye to gloomy Indiana and hello to sunny California. In December 1969, the family moved to a luxurious home in the hills above Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. 13-year-old LaToya was in awe of her new surroundings, but the change was not always easy.
It's like a Cinderella story. It was kind of hard to adjust so quickly, and it took time. We adjusted slowly, but things were going so fast.
The plush surroundings only seemed to heighten LaToya's sense of isolation.
Whenever you were around her, you sort of had a sense that there was something emotionally wrong with her, that she was troubled, that there was a problem. She wasn't allowed to have dates. In fact, as she has said, she wasn't even allowed to think about having dates, or even think about boys, or think about relationships.
Catherine and LaToya spent nearly all their free time at the local Kingdom Hall, practicing their faith as Jehovah's Witnesses.
Catherine was much more devout than the rest of the family, but her devout consciousness about that faith was passed on to LaToya as her best friend. And so LaToya was very cloistered from the real world.
In 1971, the Jackson 5 released 5 #1 hits, and the family moved to a large compound in Encino, part of LA's San Fernando Valley. Former neighbor Dick Van Patten.
LaToya and Michael used to come over to my house and help my wife clean the house and everything. They were very friendly, really nice kids.
By 1974, 18-year-old LaToya was blossoming into a young woman. But she continued to live like a sheltered, pampered child. Meanwhile, the Jackson 5 had lost their luster. Joe, however, had an idea. He decided to reinvent the family business. All 9 of his children would appear in a Las Vegas revue.
And my father decided to bring the girls into the act. And that's when I started. I made my debut there, tap dancing.
She was supposed to do some solo songs, but even then, I think Joe prevented her from doing it, and she just danced with the group.
The Jacksons were booked for a week at the MGM Grand in August of 1974. Even though the reviews were mixed, the extravaganza was well received by the audience. LaToya began to emerge from her cocoon, but stepping into the limelight seemed out of step with her faith.
She always told me that she felt guilty performing, even though she wasn't doing anything wrong. She just said that she just didn't feel right.
Coming up, LaToya Jackson meets the master manipulator.
I was the puppeteer. And when they call me a manipulator, they're right. I did manipulate. I manipulated every deal I could. I reinvented her 1,000 times.
And later, LaToya sheds her inhibitions and her clothes.
When she did that Playboy, that was the first thing she did. That hurt me so bad.
For the first 20 years of her life, LaToya Jackson lived in the shadow of her famous brothers, the Jackson Five. LaToya's world revolved around her mother, Catherine, and their shared faith. But by 1977, 21-year-old LaToya, long considered the quiet Jackson, was about to shock the entire family.
Toya sort of had this notion that maybe she could be an entertainer. Just because you happen to be related to talented people doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have talent.
In the mid-70s, the Jackson Five lost their hit-making magic. But Joe Jackson continued to try different combinations on the same family theme. After the Las Vegas review that featured all of his kids, Joe decided to promote an act with his three daughters. Biographer Randy Taraborelli.
Janet, LaToya, and Rebe were even going to form a singing group, a trio, sort of like the Supremes, and that they would be called the Jackson Sisters.
Record executives were not impressed, and the girls never caught on. The trio quickly disbanded. Once again, Joe pulled the entire family together for a one-hour variety show. Joe sold the concept to CBS, which ran the program in the summer of 1977, with LaToya as part of the cast.
She got swept away into this sort of family enterprise.
This time, LaToya felt more comfortable in the spotlight, but success was fleeting. The variety show was not picked up for a second season. Meanwhile, the boys, now grown men, were tired of their father's hit-and-miss strategies.
Joseph did have his limitations, and he couldn't take these children any further in their careers.
Catherine Jackson believes outside influences made her sons turn against their father.
They got a lot of people whispering in their ear. They got in the boys' ears and stole them away from Joe.
Joe lost his grasp on the boys, but Jackson didn't give up. Former Jackson 5 manager Richard Ahrens.
He wasn't managing the Jacksons anymore, but he had Janet and LaToya under contract.
Joe was unrelenting in pushing LaToya's solo career. Under her father's tutelage, LaToya released 3 albums in quick succession. LaToya Jackson in 1980, My Special Love in 1981, and Heart Don't Lie in 1983.
I will be my own individual, and I hope people will recognize me for that and not as the Jackson sister.
The albums languished on record shelves. LaToya placed the blame on her father. She alleged in her autobiography, growing up in the Jackson family, that Joe made her work with inexperienced producers.
He wasn't doing anything with LaToya, and I guess she was very depressed about it. And I think that was about the same time she met Jack Gordon.
Jack Gordon was a colorful character, a businessman of sorts, always looking for a good opportunity. He worked in carnivals and owned massage parlors, and before that had served time for bribing a Nevada gambling official. In 1984, Gordon attended the Grammy Awards in Las Vegas.
They were coming down the stairs, and the entire Jackson family was there, and I was there. And I said to Joe Jackson, "You're the most beautiful daughter I've ever seen in my life."
47-year-old Jack Gordon was nearly 20 years older than LaToya. Infatuated with her beauty, Gordon saw a chance to make money and legitimize his career. Gordon pulled LaToya's father Joe aside and pitched a music variety show with 28-year-old LaToya as star.
I needed a girl to co-host a show that I was doing called Music Vision.
Despite Jack Gordon's shady past, Joe Jackson believed in the fast-talking Gordon. Jack quickly became a constant visitor at the Jackson family compound in Encino.
And every night, I would go to the house. I was really in touch with LaToya. LaToya was the one that I liked.
Jack Gordon saw a bankable commodity in the shy, introverted girl and showered her with attention. The Music Vision pilot never sold, but the family seemed sold on Gordon. Slowly, Gordon convinced LaToya that he alone should be in charge of her singing career. Jack approached Jackson 5 manager Richard Ahrens.
He came to me and he said, "Could you help me get LaToya out of this contract?" And I said, "Why?" And he says, "Well, Joe's not doing anything for her, and she's so depressed and so lonely, and I really fear that she's going to do something harmful to herself."
Joe and Catherine Jackson became suspicious of Gordon's motives and the influence he had over their daughter. the Jacksons hired investigators to look into Jack's past.
Someone found out that Jack had a criminal record, and they kind of used it against him. They also thought that he had too much influence over LaToya, and they always looked at LaToya like a very immature child, which she wasn't.
Coming up, things turn ugly.
I'm small, and Joe's quite large. He picked me up by my collarbones, lifted me in the air, and threw me into the floor. He hit me hard. Now I felt, I'm going to die.
And later, LaToya bears it all.
She was forced to do it. He would just take her and just slap her across the face.
By 1986, LaToya Jackson was a 30-year-old child woman without friends or any life beyond the walls of her family's plush compound. LaToya's lackluster singing career was stalled, and her smothering home life wrecked all hope for romance. But one man promised to help her escape.
To me, she probably wasn't for it. She provided a lot of money, but I made the money for her, too.
In 1987, record promoter Sherman Heinig was scouting for American talent for Teldec, a German record company. A colleague in Los Angeles suggested the name Jackson, LaToya Jackson. Heinig offered the 31-year-old a recording contract. Jack Gordon approved the deal, but LaToya's last name, not her talent, was at the heart of the deal.
She wanted to be a star. Of course, I wanted to capitalize on the Michael Jackson idea. I thought I could just cash in on this idea.
Recording sessions for the album began in March 1987. Heinig quickly discovered that LaToya was no Michael.
I was originally told she was a good singer. Vocally, I would say she did have limitations. I mean, she wasn't a good ballad singer, I think. She didn't have a very strong voice.
Disappointed, Sherman Heinig kept his thoughts to himself. But the producer of the album was less discreet.
This guy was in the studio and was supposed to work with LaToya at all times, and evidently must have said that she can't sing, because the next day they fired him.
Heinig now believes the recording studio built within the family compound for Michael was bugged by Joe Jackson.
I think they're paranoid. They're creating problems for themselves.
After a series of stops and starts, LaToya's album Bad Girl was finally released in 1988, but the aggressive rock sound didn't catch on. Sales were less than stellar. Former Jackson 5 manager Richard Aarons.
The name Jackson helped her, but, it didn't propel her into fame.
But 51-year-old Jack Gordon was convinced he could make LaToya a star. At 32, she was still living at home, however, an arrangement Gordon decided had to change.
LaToya was in her 30s and going nowhere professionally, still under the thumb of Joe, desperately depressed about it. And Jack did as much as he could.
The tension between the Jacksons and Gordon came to a head in the fall of 1988.
I'm small, and Joe's quite large. He picked me up by my collarbones, lifted me in the air, and threw me into the floor. He hit me hard. Now I felt, I'm going to die.
Katherine Jackson denies any violence ever took place.
They started a big argument, but Joe never touched him.
Within days of the fight, LaToya left Encino for a singing engagement in Japan. She never lived under her parents' roof again. The move, apparently orchestrated by Jack Gordon, meant the couple would be together even if it meant living in and out of hotels.
She was planning on coming back, and he knew all the time what he had planned, to get her out there and not bring her back.
With LaToya under his control, Jack turned up the heat on his promotional notions. His next idea was really off the wall. Gordon suggested that LaToya, a devout Jehovah's Witness, pose for Playboy magazine.
Playboy was a creation in my mind, really. It would sell. It would be an explosive thing. So I called her and asked him, would you want her? I said, yeah, we would want her. It was Michael Jackson's sister, and I was really relying on that.
Coming up, a scandalous pictorial.
This was huge in terms of LaToya lore, because no Jackson had ever done, obviously, anything like this.
By 1988, 32-year-old LaToya Jackson was no longer the shy, unknown sister in a very famous family. She turned her back on the Jacksons and began to shed her wholesome image for good.
You know that she sold 7 million copies in 30 days. That record is still on beat today.
When Jack Gordon presented his idea of a LaToya pictorial, Playboy executives jumped at the opportunity. Cindy Rakowitz is Vice President of Public Relations and Promotions.
Playboy was used to having celebrities in the magazine, but to have LaToya Jackson was something we knew everybody would talk about.
Jackson biographer Randy Terra Borelli.
This was huge in terms of LaToya lore, because no Jackson had ever done, obviously, anything like this. Most entertainers wouldn't do anything like this. And this was the thing that was going to break LaToya out.
Gordon closed the deal for an undisclosed amount, but he still had to convince LaToya.
I don't think she knew what Playboy was. I mean, I really don't. I think she thought it was like Life magazine. I mean, she had no idea. She didn't have a clue.
But LaToya agreed, and in late 1988, she shed her clothes and her innocence for a Playboy photographer.
I never had the sense that she was freaking out because of the nudity. In fact, I think that a part of her really liked it.
3 months later, the March 1989 issue of Playboy hit newsstands with LaToya Jackson on the cover.
The first issue that LaToya appeared in sold very well. We sold 80% through on the newsstands, which by magazine industry standards is excellent. So everybody was curious about what LaToya looked like nude.
But impressive magazine sales did not impress members of the Jackson family.
When she did that Playboy, that was the first thing she did. That hurt me so bad.
That really was the beginning of the end in terms of her relationship with her family.
If disrobing for the pages of Playboy surprised the family, LaToya's next move was a total shocker. On September 5, 1989 in Reno, Nevada, 33-year-old LaToya Yvonne Jackson wed 52-year-old Jack Leon Gordon, journalist and Jackson family friend Flo Anthony.
When she came off the stage, he told her that her family was going to try to kill her, try to do this and that to her, so she had to marry him so that he could protect her.
LaToya called me that same day, and she was screaming at the phone at me. He had told her that I was out to try and kill her and kill him. And this is so stupid, him saying that he had to get married to her because that would help protect her.
Jack and LaToya's marriage was unconventional, to say the least. According to Gordon, this was not just a marriage of convenience.
Well, they were very much in the beginning. In the beginning of this relationship, there was a great love for LaToya.
Following their wedding, Gordon and Jackson hit the cabaret circuit, with LaToya performing in nightclubs from Atlantic City to Las Vegas. But there was just one small hitch: LaToya's voice.
What I had were tracks, tapes. So I would lay a Michael Jackson track, and on top of that a Diana Ross track, and on top of that LaToya's vocals. And she would just move her mouth to the lyrics of the song. And that's how we did it.
The Jacksons claim Jack Gordon brainwashed LaToya, and she found herself shut out of all things Jackson. But LaToya continued to make appearances, popping up on television shows in Chile and Turkey. Her profile got even higher when she put out a tell-all book, Growing Up in the Jackson Family, LaToya. The autobiography was published by Dutton Books in 1991. The hype surrounding LaToya's look inside the Jackson compound was massive.
All I would do is do all the talk shows. The book is coming, the book is coming. But what's in the book? If you want to know, buy the book.
Gordon's strategy worked. LaToya's autobiography, with its lurid details of emotional suffering at the hands of her father, stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 9 weeks.
Very painful. It really took a toll on me. You couldn't imagine how I felt.
She talked about Joe and the family as being extremely dysfunctional. I saw part of that, but not to the degree that she indicated. But as far as my personal feelings for her, I thought anything that she would say is true, because I don't think LaToya would lie about anything.
The Jackson family disagreed. They were furious.
Going crazy. They absolutely were going crazy.
That book will be here forever, as long as the world is. And we can't do anything about that. But all we can do is just say it's not true. But most people believe what they read.
And what they see. Playboy readers got another eyeful when LaToya made her second appearance in the magazine in November 1991. But LaToya's next outburst would nearly destroy her family for good. Coming up, more family secrets revealed.
When my sister Rebe was sexually abused, we slept in the same bed. And my mother would say to my father, "Joe, not tonight, leave her alone, let her rest."
By 1992, nude photos and a tell-all bestseller made 36-year-old LaToya Jackson almost as famous as her brother Michael. But LaToya's fame came with a huge price, a painful rift with her family that was about to get even wider.
This made her even more notorious and became even more hurtful to the family, obviously, and caused an even bigger division.
LaToya claims she suffered not only mental and physical abuse, but sexual abuse as well.
When my sister Rebe was sexually abused, we slept in the same bed. And my mother would say to my father, "Joe, not tonight, leave her alone, let her rest. Not tonight, Joe." And Rebe would say, "Mother, please go get him help. He needs help." And my mother wouldn't.
LaToya was courageous enough to come forth and set the record straight in some respects. This is why a lot of people were so taken aback by these allegations of sexual molestation, because how could you... It was difficult to not believe it, but yet you didn't want to believe it.
Catherine Jackson denies her husband ever touched his daughters.
I defended our family, and I also left with, "The doors are open, LaToya, anytime you want to," and my husband too. "Come home."
In the wake of LaToya's charges, she and husband manager Jack Gordon left the United States and began touring Europe. In Paris, the famous Moulin Rouge Cabaret featured topless dancers and animal acts. Gordon suggested LaToya appear as the headliner. LaToya balked.
It was the same thing, and it was like, if I would ask LaToya to do something, no, all right? You have to do it. No, I don't have to do anything, and then we'd sit down for a couple of days and negotiate.
Gordon convinced LaToya to participate. He then orchestrated an estimated $5 million deal for a 12-month run at the Moulin Rouge. The glitzy show debuted on March 7, 1992, but problems immediately surfaced.
In this particular deal, she had agreed to 6 shows a night, a week, 2 shows a night. And every week, one day, she would get sick. So we would do 5 shows instead of 6. I'm sorry, 5 nights instead of 6 nights. And the Moulin Rouge would have to refund all the money, because the people were coming in to see the star of the show, LaToya Jackson.
The weekly shows were cut to 5, but LaToya continued to miss performances due to illness. After only 4 months, Moulin Rouge management tore up the contract.
They didn't want to pay her. They said, "We're not going to pay you." They got really mad, and we're not paying you, and that's the end of it. And she walked out. And left Paris.
LaToya and Jack returned to the United States in the spring of 1993. The couple bought a lavish apartment in Manhattan, while LaToya began to radically alter her look.
LaToya was obsessed with plastic surgery. Really obsessed with plastic surgery. Her legs, her bust, stomach, her breasts, her nose, her chin, cheeks, everything.
Catherine Jackson maintains the number of surgeries was exaggerated.
She never got her face done. She got her breast done, but not her face.
LaToya's new look spawned a cruel joke that she and her brother Michael were actually the same person.
I do know they look alike. Those that thought LaToya was Michael were wrong. Yet, believe me, they look very much alike.
LaToya's makeover didn't help her relationship with Gordon. They argued constantly, and according to LaToya's personal assistant, Vicki Grenier, LaToya was virtually a prisoner in the couple's apartment.
She wasn't allowed out. She didn't have a key to her apartment. And I brought her food every day. I did everything. Everything a personal assistant does, but the thing that was different is she wasn't allowed out.
She was forced to stay in the house constantly. I mean, if he didn't lock her in the house, he had her scared to the point where she wouldn't go anywhere.
Jack Gordon considers the charges ludicrous. He insists that he never kept his wife as a prisoner in their home. He argues that LaToya was free to do as she pleased.
If she really didn't want to do something, she didn't do it. Or if I couldn't talk her into it, it wasn't done.
Terry Warren worked with LaToya and Jack for over a decade as an assistant. According to Warren, LaToya was always free to move about.
I never sensed that she was frightened by him. She had free ability to go and come as she pleased.
On the night of April 20th, 1993, an argument turned violent. But Jack Gordon claims LaToya was the aggressor.
I looked up and I saw a butcher knife coming at me. And I took a chair and hit her hand and knocked it out of her hand, and I hit her, and she fell down.
LaToya was taken to Lenox Hill Hospital, where she was treated for a cut lip and bruises on her arms, legs, and face. Despite his pleas of innocence, Gordon was arrested.
Jack has talked about some horrifying stories of big fights that they had. People who are close to LaToya have said that, she was physically abused by him.
Producer Frank Florio worked with LaToya following the painful incident.
She undid her clothing and was standing there with black and blue marks all over her and her face.
Gordon spent the rest of the night behind bars, and he was arraigned on 2 counts of second-degree assault. LaToya refused to press charges, and on May 18, 1993, a judge dismissed the case against Gordon.
It should be a law against what he did to my daughter. It makes me feel real bad, real sad that my daughter was manipulated like that.
Coming up, LaToya throws dirt in the face of her brother.
There was the fact that she had come out against Michael in the allegations and said that she believed the allegations to be true.
Branded the black sheep of the family, LaToya Jackson made a career out of exposing her body and her family's dirty laundry. LaToya made headlines with allegations that her father physically and sexually abused her. But when the wannabe diva targeted her brother Michael, all hell broke loose.
I never saw reporters run so fast in my life. I mean, they just flew out of that room for the phones.
By 1993, LaToya Jackson's music career was going nowhere. But her younger brother seemed unstoppable. Michael launched a world tour to prove he was still the king of pop. But the kingdom was about to topple. In September 1993, Michael was accused of child molestation. His adoring fans were shocked, and his world tour came to a screeching halt. Michael dodged the media assault, retreating to Switzerland for medical treatment of an alleged addiction to painkillers. Half a world away, the Jackson family angrily denied the allegations.
First of all, I'd like to let the world know that I'm behind my son. I don't believe any of this stuff that's being written about him.
As the accusation reached a fever pitch, 37-year-old LaToya joined the Jackson front in standing behind her brother.
When all this stuff first came out on Michael, LaToya came out and said, my brother wouldn't do anything like that.
LaToya's support, however, soon began to waver. On December 8, 1993, while vacationing in Israel, LaToya dropped a bombshell.
Michael is my brother. I love him a great deal, but I cannot and I will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small, innocent children.
That same evening, a stunned Jackson clan emerged from the confines of their compound in Encino and fired back.
It makes me feel really sad that my own daughter's out there trying to send her brother down the river because she got some money-hungry Mongol husband.
The implication was clear. Jack Gordon was the villain. LaToya was merely doing his bidding. Meanwhile, in January of 1994, after 3 months of behind-the-scenes negotiations, Michael Jackson's attorneys reached a financial settlement with his accusers. While Michael fled to his California ranch, LaToya dove back into the headlines in the Buff.
My Centerfold, Playboy Centerfold video. It's really exciting. It's a great video.
In the video released in 1994, LaToya not only appeared nude, but also revealed painful memories from her childhood.
What really seemed like a fairy tale on the outside was really more like living in a nightmare. I was held captive and I was abused by my own parents, and every thought and move was monitored.
When we started the phenomenon of the celebrity video, LaToya was one of the first people that we had featured, and it did very well.
The video sold, I think, upwards of 50,000 copies.
Jack Gordon was never short of promotional gimmicks. He kept 38-year-old LaToya busy with a string of ventures, from a country album to an aerobics video to a slew of telephone chat lines and psychic networks.
Show business, if you boil it down, what do you have? You've got a 10-year run, and you better make all the money you can, because after the end of 10 years, you're going to say LaToya who.
That is exactly what happened. By 1995, the 10-year run seemed to be over. Desperate, Gordon began booking appearances at second-rate strip clubs around the country, peddling LaToya as a celebrity host. That also meant taking off her clothes. But when Jackson refused to strip in a Pittsburgh bar, a riot broke out.
She was supposed to take her clothes off, and she wouldn't do it. And when she came out, the audience, the men, I imagine, threw eggs at her. And she just wouldn't strip, and she just ran off the stage.
Friend Barbara Norcross.
When it became sleazy, degrading, demeaning, and immoral, there's something in LaToya Jackson that could not continue.
Those words held no meaning for Gordon. He saw any publicity as good publicity, as long as the results were profitable.
It did appear to the world as LaToya was spiraling down. She really wasn't spiraling down. It was just another thing we did. And it created a lot of press, and the work would come behind the press.
LaToya told friends she was appalled by the work.
She talked about how she didn't want to do it at all, and he forced her totally into pornography.
She was very suicidal. She had thoughts that were very horrendous at many times.
But LaToya rallied. In January 1996, her hair freshly dyed blonde, she appeared at a press conference in New York to announce the Jackson Family Secrets 900 number.
I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for me, because everything that I say is always a misconception, or it's misprinted and misquoted.
One of the secrets was LaToya's desire to have a baby, but her 59-year-old husband didn't want any part of parenthood.
She wanted to have a child. I didn't. And she would get mad at me for not trying to give her a child.
There was LaToya, Jack, and me on the table. And then we would talk about kids and their attempt to try and have kids. And she would then come out and say, yeah, Jack's sperm is too slow. And if I would have been Jack at that moment, I would have probably already crawled under the table. And then she told me about their attempts to rectify that situation with a turkey baster. And I thought, oh no.
Turkey baster sex, strip club promotions, 900 numbers, tell-alls. LaToya had gimmicked herself out of mainstream showbiz and became an industry joke. In 1996, she took a long, hard look at herself.
I think that's when she began to question some of the decisions that she'd made in her life. And then the marriage started to end.
Coming up, LaToya makes a clean break.
I've been going through a divorce in Vegas and getting my life actually rectified.
By 1996, as LaToya Jackson entered her 40th year, she realized that she had endured enough. Husband Jack Gordon, once her savior, had become her albatross.
He had her terrorized. I think that when you're afraid, you'll do anything just to make sure someone's not going to punch you or to hurt you.
The relationship between LaToya and Jack was splitting at the seams. As their fortunes dwindled, their private life turned into a war. In April of 1996, 39-year-old LaToya found the courage to leave. Friend Jeffrey Phillips.
Jack wanted her to do a porn film, and that was the last straw.
LaToya Jackson never saw Jack Gordon again. Estranged since 1989, LaToya finally reached out to her family. Brother Randy came to her rescue.
He went right to New York and he called me. He said, "Mom, I got her." And I cried, and I cried, and I cried.
LaToya filed for divorce in May of 1996. The couple, whose marriage was driven by publicity, divorced quietly on June 24, 1997 in Las Vegas. Details of the divorce were not made public because of a gag order.
Since her divorce, she has been reevaluating the people around her, bringing in positive people to deal with. She has become very self-controlled, making decisions. Oh yes, she's tough cooking now.
Surprisingly, the family who once found her disgraceful now embraced LaToya. The former Jackson bad girl was finally home.
It was one of the most happiest moments of my life. I was just so happy that she had gotten away from him, alive.
I have a lovely family, a wonderful family, and I love them dearly. And I think I'm very fortunate.
There have been some mishaps in the past with just a bad association. We're very happy that we have the LaToya back that we are so used to having.
I never got mad at her in a way. I was sort of angry in a way, but I knew it wasn't her.
By 1997, 41-year-old LaToya Jackson was finally on her own, living in Las Vegas, healing from the past, and taking steps towards a happier future.
She's a much stronger person. It's nice to see that she's got a willpower now. And, I mean, she's over him. She made it through the hard part.
Right now I'm pretty content and comfortable with my life. And if I have to address issues as they come up, then I will.
We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it. And if any of you that think that you can mess with us, then you're going to have to answer to LaToya, Janet, Michael, and Tito. The Jacksons. Woo!